All right, we will call Thursday, November 14th, Sustainability Commission to order. We'll do roll call. We'll do in the room first. Steve. Here. Nick. Here. David. Here. Pam online.
Here.
All right. And I think we've got Jared is going to be out with an excused absence.
Yes.
And then we had Paul step down in between since last meeting. So Paul's no longer on the Sustainability Commission.
And Brian just came online.
And Brian, you're online?
You're muted, Brian.
I didn't realize Paul stepped down. I must have missed something, so.
This
Apologies
is
for missing.
when we're sharing it with the commission. Yeah.
This is our first meeting since he stepped down.
Okay,
He just sent a message that said he's trying to get his mic to work.
Okay.
Oh, Brian did, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we will do our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that we are on indigenous land of coastal Salish people. We have reserved treaty rights, who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. All right, approval of agenda minutes. Are there any comments on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll call the agenda approved by common consent. And approval of the meeting minutes. Any comments on the meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, we will call the meeting minutes approved by common consent. All right, and then we have public comment, 3 minutes per person. And Jan? Hi, Jan. And is there anybody else that wanted to sign up? Oh, comment, okay.
We have Mary Wichter online as
Okay.
well, so she might want,
So we'll
she
do the
has
room.
her hand raised.
Okay. All right, yeah, go ahead.
My name is Jan Bird, and actually I moved here the day after the city voted to incorporate, and I bought a house with lots of trees. And I've been a native plant steward since 2007. I've been doing restoration work in the city's park since 2008. I've actively participated in the development of the emergency tree ordinance that was passed 2016, and the urban forestry management plan, which I think was passed in 2021, losing track of time. And I know this commission and the division can only do what city council directs it to do, but I just want to let you know some of my concerns that I've been raising with city council. And I commented years ago that the urban forestry management plan should be a department by itself and not an add-on to one of our existing departments if we were going to have a robust program. And of course, a new division was started and it was combined with sustainability elements. And if you want to see the work on it, a lot of it seems to be emphasis on climate action types of things, which are important. But I don't always see their urban forestry management plan, in it. And I think part of it is because there's parts of it that are scattered in different departments. So it'd be really helpful if once the budget's finalized, if we could get some kind of chart that shows urban forestry management plan, and then what are the different goals? Because some of it's out of community development, because they're going to be doing the regulations. I think some of it seems to be maybe in stormwater. It's kind of all over the place, and it'd be nice for the public to have that, on the webpage, so we kind of know, where the different parts are. And the other thing I've advocated for many years is an in-house arborist. I think long-term we need someone with expertise to help with that particular effort, because in order to have a robust plan, you just need a little more help. I mean, we've done, actually, sustainability division and you folks have done a lot of work in 1 year, but if we added an urban forester, just imagine how much more can get done. It'd be really pretty awesome. But anyway, I know it's not in the cards for the next budget cycle. I'm just hoping that you're getting adequate support via consulting arborists until the budget situation improves and we can, get started on things. I did have one question. There was a part on the budget that talked about the stormwater coming out of Public Works. So they're going to identify a methodology to map tree canopy and adopt the canopy goals to support stormwater management. So I'm hoping this is including the big picture of all the parks and the whole city. And first step for implementing the urban forestry management plan. And if it does, that answers a lot of my concerns. I'm a little concerned we're starting out with a street tree assessment because the big one that the stormwater department's gonna do won't be until 2026. We've got trees that are dying now, so it seems like a long way off. I'd really like to see some money, put into that sooner rather than later. And basically because those where the biggest trees are, they produce the most eco system services. So I'd really like to concentrate on the parks where we have the large trees and where they are dying, some of them are. So, but anyway, I also understand that you started work on getting the Tree City recognition. Looking forward to getting that off the ground and getting your progress reports on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jen. And we did receive your, by email this afternoon as well. So thank you. All right, and then Mary.
I'm promoting Mary to panelist.
Good evening. This is Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish. When I looked at my house, it was in Redmond. When I moved in, it was in Sammamish. So 24 years. Absolute ditto to the discussions before the meeting started and to everything that Jan Bird said, presented on her emails. I also, at her urging, along with Sharon Steinbess, who does stormwater as well, became a Washington Native Plant Steward in 2019, 2020, right when COVID hit, but we're really glad to have the support of the city following on with that. I wanted to speak a little, I've only spoke a couple times, I think quarterly to you guys, but I think you're an awesome group and I know you have a lot to do. And I think although we're a Tree City, we're still applying for that to come through because I know there's been other things, but I hope you're doing that. I know that you work on sustainability and that you're also doing climate action. So I live in a landslide hazard area, kind of at the bottom of the hill where there's also steep slopes and there's a lot of trees, but if water doesn't get handled, we lose the trees. So I wanted to say that the city has just adopted or voted to adopt the critical area rules starting January 1st of 2025. And in those, we have like landslide erosion, seismic hazards, streams, wetlands. But what we don't have is we don't have trees as part of a critical area. But if something is recognized as steep slopes, it's supposed to have 100% of the trees retained. So I think they're tied in there. And then the city also just passed their updated clearing and grading code for under the critical areas and also the administrative code for processing permits faster. And in that, they define what clearing is, what grading is, what cutting and pruning is. And what's happening, particularly around where I live, is a lot of times people don't know what they can't do and they just cut the trees or they just clear the entire parcel with not having a permit at all. And I think with the new codes that have just been voted to be adopted, it would be really helpful if your group would work with like Avril Beatty and her group for the critical areas so people know that when you cut down or when you prune a tree, you're only supposed to prune about like a third of it at a time. You're not supposed to go take too many branches because it's harmful to it. And then if you're cutting it, you need to have permits usually. And that also, the native plants need to get done. So like if you are clearing more than 200 feet in a drainage area, you're supposed to have native plant replacement. And I think a lot of people don't know. I think they just, they see somebody down the street doing something, they just assume they can and they go do it. And I think we need to reach out and have like some cheat sheets or something on the web that tells people, hey, we've adopted these new rules under the comp plan for the critical areas, for the trees, and this is what we want to do, preserve them. So pretty much you need a permit if you're doing clearing and grading, so just don't do it. Go and ask the city first and then better ways to take care of the trees.
15 seconds, Mary.
Yes, and then also I, as a docket in 2019, I had gotten transfer of development rights put in, and it's actually going to happen. It's on the work plan in 2025. So in transfer of development rights, I would say that you would want to keep as many trees, like maybe a fully forested steep slope would have more value for trading density into a center area or town center area. So those are just things.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
That's everybody online.
All right, thank you, Mary. All right.
David, Tim, let me know. He'll be here in about 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I just realized I
So.
forgot to
No worries.
check him on. All right. So first thing on the agenda is gonna be the commissioner team building, basically roundtable. And we kind of play this by ear. This is when we were just talking about, Steve, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but basically just kind of going over a little bit of our background, why we kind of signed up, very similar to what we did before, and kind of what area we think we should focus on. And then we're gonna have a breakout. So I think Mary and Brian online, and then us in the room, talk a little bit about the climate action plan and what areas are gonna be most impactful. And, the question might be impactful for what, right? And so that's kind of the discussion that we've talked about having. Now, at least I did pictured it would be a longer session with some whiteboarding and throwing some ideas up there and kind of whittling it down. And I think we can do that over time. We obviously won't do that in today's meeting, but at least we can get a direction, I would hope. I can start.
If I could just,
Yeah.
for the first one, really what we're looking for your preference on is on the outreach ideas. You may remember at the last meeting, there was a discussion about what those 3 potential outreach for the commission to really take on.
Mhm.
So that's that area, and then we'll go into the cap strategies later. Does that make sense?
Okay, so the third bullet we won't go into on that.
Well, no, we could have a high level discussion, but we really wanna get direction on that last
Good,
one.
okay.
What is the outreach
Good.
one that you
Hey, Tim.
prefer?
Hauser?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Here.
Traffic was way more fun than I thought.
All right, so we're at the point, we're gonna do a quick roundtable, with the commissioners, just a little bit about background. Why did you want to join the Sustainability Commission? A little bit what we've done before, but it's been a while. And then kind of your top area, that you think that the city should focus on to meet their sustainability goals. In general, this will kind of get an idea of, we're not doing the whiteboarding session that we talked about with, having a couple of hours kind of deep diving into it with our different backgrounds and getting to know each other. So this is just a quick kind of, I think, first step into that arena.
Yeah, this will help lead into the cap exercise that we're doing as the second part of today's meeting.
So we'll have a little bit of a breakout, then come back together.
And to remind each other where your common ground is, if there's folks who have very similar interests.
So just, I'll start off, David Thielen, background. I've got a Big 5 consulting background, worked for KPMG for 7 or 8 years, Microsoft 7 or 8 years, MBA from the University of Washington. I have been leading a company called Tree Free Solutions, where we grow a cane and sell it to companies like IKEA. So instead of cutting down trees, they use our cane and make their composite wood material. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years. You can also make biofuel out of it. And so I've been very interested in from a sustainability perspective, especially leveraging from a business perspective. There's a lot of different angles that you can take on sustainability. And one of the biggest things I've seen, one of the biggest challenges I've seen companies and cities kind of get into is they have these lofty goals, but there's no work back plan that says how we're going to get there. And a lot of things that you guys have probably seen me bring up in these meetings are all about, what are we setting up so we can be successful, so we can meet these things. So a lot of the reasons why I threw my name in the hat and wanted to be a part of this is not only, I've got 3 young daughters and they're all going through the city of Sammamish, or have gone through the city of Sammamish's education system. And hopefully, this is a sustainable city, more so every year. And so I've got some vested interest there, but just one of the biggest things again that I've seen is the plans. A lot of times there isn't any real plan. There's just an idea of where we want to go and what we want to do. And I thought I could bring some structure to make sure that as we put these ideas out there, that we do have a work back plan that's realistic. We can set realistic expectations. We've got some KPIs. We can still be aggressive after it, but let's make sure it's realistic as well as aggressive. So, and you know, a lot of the things that on the cap, one of the first things I saw was, you know, almost 90% of the greenhouse gas is residential. So I was more curious than anything of how is the city gonna go around to try to push that down and get the residents to start lowering that footprint, and then the vehicle miles traveled. So those two things, obviously there's some of the two key things in the cap table that get very highlighted. So that's kind of why I joined.
And then which outreach idea is your preference?
On the outreach, I think you guys are doing a good job already on the kind of the heat pump campaign. You guys, every city thing I go to, you guys are talking about it and pushing it. You have information out there. Yeah, I think number two. I mean, going out to most of the city is made up of, I think a majority of them have HOAs in one form or another. So I think having some type of walkthrough about what the city is doing and just getting out there and, you know, feet on the ground.
Thank you.
Oh, you want me to go next?
Yeah.
All right, great. I'll go next. Okay, Tim Hauser, professional background. I work at Amazon, which is why it took me so long to get here. I apologize. The rain and the dark made it worse than normal. But within Amazon, I specifically work in the worldwide sustainability team. So my background there relates here. What I do in particular is we are building out the tooling and the models to try to estimate where Amazon is going to be at 2040. And then so to today's point, like we got to see where we're going to be and estimate how much carbon we're going to be producing, and then come up with ways to stop emitting that carbon while still fulfilling all of our business needs and our customer needs. So that's what my job is at the moment. And one of the things that I always have to context shift between there and here, Amazon's targeting 2040 and here's 2050. So I get really freaked out when I see our plans here. So I'm like, we only have 15 years because that's my day job is 15 years. We have 25. So I get a little anxiety about that from time to time. So I've been doing that for 3 years now. Been at Amazon for 12. Prior to that, I was in the Air Force. And then because we're in Sammamish, I'll go all the way back. I was in high school. I was the first graduating class there in '99. So that was kind of cool. And then went to the University of Washington. And so deep roots here, but also have moved around quite a bit as well. Why I joined the Sustainability Commission is really very similar story, right? Like I have 2 kids. They're growing up here. They love Sammamish, but they're experiencing summers that were nothing like I've ever experienced with smoke and things like that. And I just am looking for ways to sort of scale my impact and trying to do it. So that's why I work where I work at Amazon. And that's why when this opportunity popped up, I was like, well, let me see what I can do. Let me see if how this works, what's it all about. And so here I am. And I'm super excited to try to get us to where we need to be as a city, which goes into the cap. So Dave's already called it out, and I know Steve's a huge proponent of it as well, but like it's pretty obvious what you need to do when you read the cap. Like we're gonna get a lot of headwinds from a lot of things, hopefully, that are just kind of in place. And we need the residents of Sammamish to really do just like 2 things, right? And not really like it's minimal, it's expensive stuff, but like you got to get people switched over to heat pumps. Like that's like the #1 thing that we need to be focused on. And then how do we drive less, or how do we get people, how do we increase electric vehicles and that kind of stuff and different modes of transportation. So I really like the cap. It reminds me a lot of the stuff we do in my work in terms of like how we think about the problems, and it makes it really clear when you read it, like these are the things that matter, and this is what we should be focusing on as a city. And it takes away a lot of the ambiguity and allows people to focus. So to that point, when I get down to the questions, I kind of already answered it, but for me, it's number 3. Like you have to double down there, in my opinion. Like, yeah, we do a good job of talking about it, but when we go to farmers markets and do all that kind of thing, but not everybody goes to those things. Like we have to communicate and over communicate and figure out ways to incentivize people to do heat pumps, because that's really the #1 thing that needs to happen. And so focus there until we hit that goal, and then we can focus that, or until we're really confident that we see like a huge spike in heat pump happening, and then we can relax a little bit and move to to some of the other things. So that's mainly why I'm here.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, well, Tim, you were so successful with the talk just now. I went out and bought myself a.
10 years ago, right, or whatever. it was.
No, a month ago. And I got my first electric bill and it's down $30.
Is it really?
Yeah. I got, my interest in climate started way long ago, not really from the point of view of knowing what to do to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, but more from just a scientific point of view, because I spent most of my career, I'm retired and have been for almost 9 years now from Boeing. I spent most of my career in material science and doing a lot of computer modeling. And I was very curious about how does the modeling I'm doing relate to these global climate models? And I wanted to understand whether or not I thought these global climate models were what the modeling world would call similitude based. In other words, you've got so many parameters in there that your ability to predict is, you can tell what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, but if you think you can predict what's going to happen 100 years from now, you're crazy. Anyway, that was how I got started probably 20 years ago. And as I retired, I got a job or a consulting job with a scientific software outfit that allows me to continue, dabbling in the computer modeling business, but it's not a climate model. Anyway, what this led to was me trying to answer for myself questions about, well, is this problem we're facing human caused? How much of the greenhouse gases are absorbed by the oceans and by the trees? What effects do increasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have on plants and the crops we grow for food? And I also, what I attempted to do was try and something that I had done in my professional world was put together presentations and then go out and explain stuff to people. So I first wanted to explain it to myself and then be able to present it to somebody else about why does more CO2 in the atmosphere warm it up, for instance, things like that. So I've done a lot of that. And then when the city started, this goes back now to the first initial resolution to reduce greenhouse gases. They're then hiring a consultant to develop the climate action plan, and then getting a citizens committee to put together to review the document and help edit it before it got finally accepted and approved. So I thought, oh, here's an opportunity to really do something to maybe possibly have some influence on the community. And Van Duran is very local. It's only 60,000 people out of a planet that's got 8 billion people that are all doing their bit to pollute. So that's what excited me to get involved. I think I have a very well-grounded handle on the science behind it. What I see as what's needed is a giant education process globally, and then, okay, let's start locally. It's a little easier. What I'll note is that, as you noted, we got till 2050. I won't be here then, either on the committee or maybe even alive. But the point is we don't have to bite off half the reduction in 1 year. We can nibble at it going forward. So my heat pump is a nibble. So when I look at those outreach things, I'm like you, heat pumps are where we need to attack it, because one of the things I did early on when the city council was figuring out what they wanted their goals to be, I looked at those goals and said, oh, wow, those are pretty sporty. So I sat down with an Excel spreadsheet and figured out, made some assumptions, figured out for my own purposes, whether or not you can actually get from where we are today at in excess of over 500,000 metric tons per year to where they want to be at 4% of that in 2050. And with some relatively modest assumptions, like 3 or 4% adoption of electric vehicles per year, 3 or 4% adoption of heat pumps versus forced air gas furnaces. Where's most of the gas burned? It's in that furnace. Next item is your water heater. All of these things represent incremental decreases, and yeah, you can probably get there, but the big bugaboo is going to be, as you pointed out, is going to be getting rid of things that burn natural gas in your house. And the first one to look at is your furnace. So number 3 is what I think is the biggie, but 1 and 2 are related. That's the educational process in my view. That when you get down to brass taxes, how we're going to go forward and convince our neighbors that heat pumps are great ideas. And one of the ways might be economics.
I like it.
Totally.
Thank you, Steve.
Nick Garson. So I've spent my whole career working in the environment. I'm a geologist. I've got a bachelor's and a master's in geology, and my career has been about remediating the environment, cleaning up contaminated soil and groundwater and surface water. So I come from a technical project management background. My experience has been, and this is why I've been struggling with the list a little bit, is when we're being asked to choose from a menu, well, I need to understand what are the resources, what's the budget, what's the schedule, all those sorts of details. Maybe we'll get there and that'll help inform the decisions. But that's kind of where I've come from in my career. A lot of it's about project management, but it's also been working with risk management, communicating environmental risks to the public. That's been my educational experience, as well as working with the confines of agency requirements and permits and things of that nature. So it's kind of a complicated stew of things. Most of my career has been with the Boeing company. I've spent 26 years in the global environmental sustainability group. So not only do we manage environmental cleanup projects, but at the same time, there's been efforts figuring out how to reduce the Boeing company's greenhouse gas footprint in the products, right? Things like sustainable aviation fuel, figuring out, similar to Amazon, how do you decarbonize the aerospace and defense industry? It's a huge endeavor. So that's sort of been my thought process and background. Why did I join the commission? I've mentioned this a couple times. I have not had an opportunity to kind of make a difference in my backyard. I've worked in lots of other communities that have been impacted by environmental contamination and releases historically, whether it's been landfills or manufacturing operations. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to make a difference locally. And I don't feel like my priority areas have been focused on in the CAP. I came into the commission wanting to make a difference in terms of water conservation, water resources, water protection. Very interested in the waste side. A lot of the work I do in remediation is trying to figure out how do we take a waste from one industry, put it back into productive use, putting nature to work on environmental cleanups, things of that nature. And then the resiliency side as well. I think the hardest part about this commission, I'm used to managing projects and budgets and technical stuff, but human behavior is a challenge, right? And a lot of what we're trying to do here is influence behavior. And I'll be honest, there is no one within my circle of friends in Sammamish who know anything about the climate action plan or this commission. I applaud the people who have come here today because you guys are the champions, right? So we've got a challenge ahead of us. People in Sammamish are busy, whether it's work, school, kids, fitness, and so that's why I think number two is our biggest opportunity is to, and I, you know, we talked about this before, we put talking points together for homeowners associations, right? What are things that the city's doing, but what can we and our neighbors do? I agree with some of the information about the urban forest management plan. There are a lot of older neighborhoods in Sammamish where the trees are dying, and the HOAs don't know what types of trees would actually be resilient in our neighborhood. There's a study about that, right? So, you know, that could be part of the package. I saw something recently, the city was looking at rainwater capture for reuse. We've been doing that on a remediation project. That's a great idea. Heat pumps, I don't know. I mean, I've talked to a few people about it. It's the cost. Like, am I gonna spend 20 grand on college tuition or put in a heat pump, you know, and it comes down to that choice. I mean, some of it comes down to personal consumptive behavior. I think there are things people that can do to reduce, you know, turning down the heat a little bit, not having the AC run as much in the summer, turning lights off. You know, there are lots of other things that, and all this information's on the city website on how people can lower their footprint in their house, you know, simple actions. But I think that's the biggest challenge. You know, we've got a lot of expertise on this team, but the success of this climate action plan is really going to be relying upon the people of Sammamish and their engagement, right? And that's really the challenge for this group.
All right, we have Pam and Brian online. Pam, do you wanna?
Sure, you know, like the rest of you, I've gone through this a couple of times. I come from the tech industry, as software, hardware, and then a short stint at Alaska Airlines in their corporate communications team. I'm a comms PR pro many, many years, more years than I care to admit. And for me, the reason that I wanted to be involved with this group is I go back to the very first Earth Day. Again, a very, very long time ago. I was one of those kids who decided that they didn't want to take the stinky diesel spewing school bus. And so I walked to school with my little satchel in hand in San Antonio, Texas, and the environment is just something that I've always cared about very passionately and try to live true to that passion. And then, like many of us, have seen the change in our climate here as well as around the rest of the globe, and thought that joining the commission is my small way of hopefully making an impact, as well as taking what I do in my day job and influencing people, and hopefully, I don't want to say incentivizing, but influencing people to want to make a change. And I agree with the others that have said we've got a big challenge ahead of us. I think it's going to take us at least the better part of a year to start getting the word out. I think after the election and with all the rollback and changes, we're probably going to get a lot of questions about cost and timeframes. And I think we need to have really excellent messaging and talking points and pillars of information we can give to people. You know, HOAs are a way to start, but we also know, as I can't remember who said in meeting a couple of months ago, that we don't have a lot of access to the HOA leadership. So we're going to have to find a way to get in the community. So that's why I'm here.
All right, it looks like Brian's mic is not working. And then Pam, did you on the three areas of outreach, did you have an opinion on one of those?
Number two.
Okay.
I think educational video, I think it cost money. I don't know how much, but then we still have to figure out how to distribute the video and have it viewable by the community.
So let me ask a question on that, because Pam made me think about something. We don't know what presentation to HOAs means yet, right?
Yeah.
We're thinking PowerPoint, maybe we'd be open, maybe it's a video or something that could be presented, so. Maybe 1 and 2 or a combination, I don't know yet, but.
Maybe, and maybe we can find a way to create and produce a meaningful video, but then, again, we're challenged with distribution and viewership and getting people to care. I saw quite a bit of, interesting commentary from people during the election on various statewide initiatives. So we'll see how far we get.
And I don't think our outreach should be, and we talked about this, I think last time, our outreach needs to be, or should be very similar to, outreach for, like a city council, seat, right? Where you've got volunteers from the community that sign up and say, hey, I support this candidate. I'm gonna go out and hand out flyers and give information out. I don't, because a handful of commissioners isn't gonna be able to make a whole lot of impact. But I think if we get the word out and say, hey, we're looking for volunteers that believe in this, not candidate, but this idea of sustainability,
Right.
we're looking for people to just, hand out a flyer, talk a little bit of information, point them to a video, point them to, maybe a sustainability, we've already got a footprint on the website. So something like that. So I think.
Yeah, I think something like that might be doable. I don't know what to call them, guerrilla marketing terms, people on the street, right? Street teams, like they do on college campuses, or brand, climate ambassadors or evangelists, whatever, whatever fits, but something like that.
Yeah, and it's all on volunteer basis, and so it's nothing off
Yeah.
the city budget, which. And I think we could drum up 20 or 30 or 40 people that want to take an area of the city and knock on doors and hand out.
Well,
flyers.
I'm sorry, Pam, I don't want to cut in your time, but I do have a comment. When we had the city communications manager here a couple months ago, that's the challenge. Like, I like reading the sustainability newsletter. A lot of people don't. And so what is the communication method? Is it electronic? Is it paper? Is it both? I mean, there's so many demands on people's time, right?
It has to be
I-
everything.
Right,
I think
yeah.
it's.
I
totally agree.
think we
Yeah,
need,
and-
I think we need multi-point, multi-touch, touch points in the marketing world, omni-channel communication, gag me, but, but you get it. Multiple
and I-
touch points.
The reason, I agree with all these points, the reason I didn't go with number 2 is specifically, I don't think the return on investment is there in terms of people. I don't know how many, like, I've never been to an HOA meeting for my HOA in the entire time I've lived here. And I know when we vote, they get like 3 votes for members. Like, it's an interesting idea, right? Like, and I'm not saying we don't do that, but it can't be that, right? It's gotta be that and what Dave's presenting, right? Which I think is a really good idea to get people like out on
Yeah,
the street.
yeah.
I know we were just given these options, like this was our menu of choices, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think that is those are high attended meetings, at least in my meetings experience. It's not like you're gonna get my neighborhood has 250 houses, there's not gonna be 250 people there. There's gonna
Yeah.
be the HOA, which is
I didn't consider
6.
that. We have very spirited
Oh,
HOA
good.
meetings and a lot of attendance. but-
Oh, interesting.
But I guess that's not every neighborhood, right? So
Yeah.
that's your point, yeah.
So yeah, it's a yes and like,
Mm.
for kind of all of this, right? Like,
Yeah.
we should be,
Right.
it's all about the education, to Steve's point, and telling people what is out there, what can you be doing, what are the little things you should do now, what are the big things you should think about doing later when it comes time to do the big things. And what's important, the guide did that, right?
Yeah.
Easy time for you, small impact, but it's an easy change, big impact, but it's hard, or it's expensive, or whatever, and so you should kind of stage your way.
I mean, there's so many directions we can pull on this. I remember when my kids were in high school and they had to do a community service project as part of graduation, there could be a connection between the environment and graduating from Skyline High School, this is big and it's gonna be difficult to figure out what's the focus because we're branching through more demographic groups, trying to figure out what communication platform works best. But I think we just need to sort the messaging out. I think once we figure out, the messaging is the hardest part, and then we can figure out the delivery afterwards.
Yeah, and I think our biggest thing is, our job isn't to convince anybody one way or the other. Our job is just to make sure they're aware of things that the city, programs that are available in the city, things that the city's trying to accomplish. And then, it's up to them whether they move one direction or the other. But our job, I think, is to get information out there, let people know where it's at, where they can access it, and then make that choice whether or not they want to send their kid to college or pay for heat pump. To your point.
I'd like to reiterate a point I made earlier. Kind of in response to your comment about heat pumps. You're right, not everybody's gonna do what I did, go out and replace a perfectly good gas furnace with a heat pump. But at some point, they're gonna replace worn out, too expensive to repair gas furnace with another heating source. So that's when the individual that is faced with that problem, that's when you need to be there, or he needs to have, or he or she needs to have information that there are other alternatives to just putting in another high efficiency gas furnace. And I haven't done this down to the penny, but I suspect that if you did a cost trade-off on installation costs and then operating costs, the gas furnace versus the heat pump, I think the heat pump would probably win. If you took a window of, say, I don't know, 5 or 10 years down the road. In my view is every gas furnace in this city is gonna break before 2050. I'm not feeling.
25 years probably.
Yeah. So if we get every one of those people with a gas furnace, and according to statistics I found, it's about 75% of the city is heating their house with gas. If we can get every one of them to convert to the heat pump, maybe somebody does it next year, somebody does it 15 years. We're in good shape. I think that your other point about we got to do two things. We got to get them to buy electric cars and do heat pumps. They're in probably 15 or 20 years, you might not have any other options other than an electric car. A lot of these major manufacturers are putting dates out there in the future when they want to convert their fleet to electric. So it'll be, you either buy, when your car breaks, you either go buy electric or you walk.
Where I've seen progress in what you're talking about is the appliances. I know people that have upgraded from gas to electric appliances because they are more efficient.
Yes.
They're cheaper to operate. I don't think there's as much information about heat pumps. And it's a high near-term expense, and then hopefully your long-term costs are less, right?
Yeah, it is a big expense.
Yeah.
100%, yeah, you wanna get the education in as many times as you can so they know they're there, they know what it is, but to your point, Steve, like, not everyone's you. And I've thought about what you did where I'm like, should I just replace my totally functioning gas furnace now with a heat pump? I can't do it. I can't pick myself to it, but when it does go out, I'm doing that. But there's the other side of it is that, like, we should, and we talked about this idea in the past, is like, how do we get the folks that do installations for heating sources in people's houses to be like, you know what, I'm gonna tell you about a heat pump, because when it breaks, that's when you need to replace it, and you're suddenly in an emergency because you need heat. And you're not gonna go sit down and spend 3 days or 3 hours even researching what is the best thing to do. You're gonna call whomever, Bell Red, and be like, I need you to come out here and put in a heat and give me a new furnace. And when Bell Red shows up, they need to be like, you can get a new furnace, but we can also do this heat pump thing. And this is why the heat pump's better, and make sure that they're getting that expert advice from that person that they trust, because that's when the decision gets made. It's not everybody's.
But the only way they're doing that is if they make more money on heat pump, right?
Yeah, you probably, yeah.
So they're not, so that's the, how do you get them to put something
Yeah, because they
forward.
don't care about the operating costs. I mean, that's not on.
No,
that-
they're in business to sell furnaces,
So,
right?
so tying this back to the climate action plan, what are the metrics? If somebody hires a contractor putting a heat pump, does it say that on their permit and then the city knows that so many heat pumps have been installed?
Yep.
Okay. all right.
Yes.
I had to get it inspected, so the city knows I have a heat pump.
Yeah, and we're tracking those
Because
numbers.
it's an electrical, you gotta buy a permit. I don't know, $125 or something like that. And you gotta have somebody come out and inspect it to make sure I'm not gonna electrocute my dog or whatever.
Yeah.
Can
Alright.
can you, to that point, like, as a city, you can be like, hey, you have to do this, you have to talk about it.
Nope.
Yeah, there's a lot of push and pull that
Yep.
we. that
There's
exists,
a,
right?
it's a lot that the city does
Can't-
not have
yeah.
control over or the ability to do, and I will just offer that there will probably be more of that
Sure.
coming. So,
But you can do, to be, what's the east side,
Energy Smart, you said?
Energy Smart East Side, right? By joining that, to be a contractor in there, you have to do certain things, right? They have to talk about. heat
We
pumps,
have a
right? So
list
you
of
can-
contractors that we work with that provide technical assistance, maintenance information and quotes.
And part of that is that they're somehow incentivized or prodded to talk about these things. And
and I do think a lot of contractors, I will, because there is a lot of because there are incentive dollars out there for conversions. I do think contractors, when you're calling, they're like, well, there's this option as well, right?
Yeah.
If you want, that incentive still, I'm
Mhm.
sure Steve can tell us, isn't gonna knock down the capital costs too significantly, but it's there.
Makes it more
$2,000
reasonable.
supposedly, it's a tax credit.
it's
Right.
tax credit, you know.
Right.
But yeah, and so it's rather, how do we get people to make sure they're calling those people?
Yep.
That are more likely to do that. I'm not saying the contractors are out there doing nefarious
No,
things
right,
in their back,
right.
right? But like, how do you get into the people that are
Yeah.
gonna do the thing?
And I
Right
will
way.
say that I financed it with a 0 interest loan.
Right.
Free money.
Nice. Alright,
Brian also submitted a statement if you
Ah.
want to read that out loud.
yeah. Yeah, can you read it?
Yeah, I can. I am Brian and I'm a high school student. I joined this commission because I am passionate about bettering our community and others. I like to think of steps of achieving sustainability goals while also taking in different limits we have. I feel this knowledge will help me be able to tell my friends and family too about sustainability for the future. I want to take what I learn and use it in the future where I can keep spreading this knowledge. I probably prefer outreach idea number 3.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
So what I'm hearing is we've got a fair split down the room between the second and third outreach idea. So perhaps at our December meeting, we can kind of flush that out a little bit and start some planning going into the new year.
Why don't we put some ideas about what that could look like so that you have something to react to and it's not building it directly? Would that be helpful?
Maybe define what a presentation is that what you're getting at, Rachel, or?
Define what a campaign is, because I think
campaign,
you're
yeah.
right there. Ultimately, right, I think to your point, we want that person who has that heater, the heating source that goes out to go, oh, I have more than one option.
Right.
Right? And so the different ways that we get in front of them, whether it's your HOA which is active, right? Or Tim's HOA, Tim's neighborhood gets, these, this army of folks that are out there knocking on doors, right? Maybe it's just a layer.
I mean, I think the
approach.
difference is when people upgrade their appliances, it's planned and you go to stores and you look at things on showrooms. When your heater goes out, it's an emergency, right?
Right.
Just fix it. I don't care. I don't want to pay a lot, just fix it.
But if
people
you
don't put
know
as much
ahead
thought
of
into it.
time.
Yeah, right.
If you know ahead of time
Yep.
about the different technologies, and I know that my washer and dryer are pretty darn close. Now I'm wholly right, as I know my heater's not, but it will be soon, right? I think you start having those, discussions in your head before it conks,
Right.
Immediately, so.
I
I think
just don't
there's
think a
just
lot
lots
of
of
people will know about it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think back to, and we've had this discussion before, it's like, what is the impact, right? Because you all nailed it on the head, right? It's the decarbonization, right, of heating sources in residential uses, and it's vehicle miles traveled. So how do we focus on those things there are lots of other things under the sustainability and cap heading that we can do, but if we're really looking at changing those numbers, I think there's consensus that those are the places to do that.
So is number two. It seems to me, we've got a real disjointed message here. And we've got to put it together into some a package that we can deliver in a few minutes.
Yep.
And it has to be compelling. That's why I said, I think economics is one of the ways to do it. If we can develop a good economic argument. Now people know, wallets are one of their favorite items. They want to spend money they don't have to.
But I think, to the point about the tree canopy as well. So there's got to be a message on both sides, right? How do you lower your own carbon footprint and also help the city maintain their carbon capture side of it as well? So and also on the water side, right? So it's the whole picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too focused on, as we tell this message, we need to tell this is one part of a bigger or this is one piece of the bigger puzzle, right? And so here's everything that the city's trying to accomplish. Here are two big pieces. They're big pieces of the puzzle, but they're not the only pieces of the puzzle that I think. Because the first thing that comes to mind, okay, we're doing this over here, but I also saw, my neighbor cut down, 5 trees. Are you guys aware of that? How does the carbon capture side of things, the tree canopy and the water preservation and the recycling, right? We have all these different programs.
Balance.
It's the whole wheel, right? So I don't know. And not that you want to throw a bunch at somebody, but you also want to show them that, hey, we have a very comprehensive plan here. Here's the overall picture. Here's the 2 things that we're going after right now. But also, let them know that there's an overall canopy, tree canopy. There's also, umbrella of coverage that we're doing from a sustainability perspective in the city of Sammamish.
So it seems to me an intro, I don't know what to call it, presentation, video, or whatever, would be, where's the carbon come from and where's it go? So you've got these sources, which are us and our furnaces and our cars and so on. And then you've got the sinks, the trees, the lake. So that gives you it should give everybody a kind of a general view of, oh, we had a problem here. We're putting too much of this carbon in here and raising the temperature. It's getting too hot in our poor trees, which were evolved into species that lived in this environment, years ago. Now can't cope with it. Now all of a sudden we need ponderosa pines from eastern Washington or sequoias, which are able to deal with a more arid environment. Something like that. But you're not gonna uproot a couple hundred acres of ponderosa pines from over there in Spokane, bring them over and plunk them in the ground.
Yeah. I think as far as, what does this all look like when we do push it out there? I think we can kind of keep building on that, what is the message that the city wants the residents to hear? And then, how broad do you want to get? And then, how focused do you want to zero in on it and say, hey, here's 2 of the 8 things that we're going after.
You can have other presentations that drill down and get detailed.
Okay. All right. Was that enough of?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And then, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the climate action planning that we have set up.
Yes. So before we get into the prioritization exercise, I just wanted to quickly kind of give a refresh of the 2024 work plan, give an update on where we're at with some of these work plan items, and then give you all an overview of the 25-26 work plan. So as you know, we published our Sustainable Sammamish Guide. We successfully joined the East Side Climate Partnership and are signed on to the Energy Smart East Side Heat Pump Incentive Program. The recycling RE Plus is the city's recycling program. We have 5 recycling events throughout the year. And we're working on getting all the data from those events. That goes through the new year. And then our fleet electrification assessment, we gave you all the study update. That study completed by the end of this most recent summer. We also are exploring a green purchasing policy as an internal facing document. So working with each of the city's departments on their purchases for events, supplies, etc. We're currently piloting that policy. We have a draft policy and we're piloting it with the Parks Department right now. And we're hoping to roll that out once we get some lessons learned and feedback from that department to the whole city starting in the new year. You all are here as part of our Sustainability Commission, and we're going to be continuing that work into the future. Our Tree City application is in progress, and we're going to have that submitted and complete by early December. And then we're hoping to hear back also right in the new year around January of whether or not the city does qualify and is certified as a tree city. As part of that tree UFMP work, we're currently doing a right-of-way tree study with the Public Works Department. So we're looking at all of the street trees and trees in the right-of-way that are currently managed by our Public Works maintenance team, looking at the tree health, getting an updated mapping of that tree inventory, and then integrating those trees into our asset management so that the maintenance crews have better record of the tree maintenance that's going on, trees that are planted and removed, and are also able to better care for them with our changing climate into the future.
Can I ask a question about the commission staffing? So
Of course,
notice that the city's advertising an open position for this commission.
yes.
And I don't know if that was to replace Paul. Did he have a 1-year term or?
So there's 2 positions that are up at the end of January.
Okay,
So Pam's position and Jared's position. However, and then we also have Paul's position that is open as well.
okay, so
Vacancy.
will the process be the same? Will it be interviews with the city council? And will this commission have any input on the selection of new commissioners?
No, it's the purview of the city council to do that.
So it'll be the same process, but council will decide who.
This will be next
Is
month,
appointed.
December, right?
So that process happens during January, and then new commissioners, their first meeting would be February of 2025.
Okay.
And at that time, we'll also have an election for chair and vice chair. Of course. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got this right-of-way tree study. You walk through, well, I do this because it's close by, Pine Lake Park. And I'm walking through some of those trails, and you notice there'll be a tag on a tree with a number on it.
This is in a park.
Huh?
This is within a
In
park.
a city park.
So that would be one of the park's trees. That's not the right-of-way trees that are necessarily maintained
but-
by the Public Works Department.
To Dan's point, it seems to me that there, I'm wondering was that a survey that was done at some time in the past by the city? Why is that tree tagged? They're not all tagged. You go over to Beaver Lake Park, you can find them.
We can ask about that, Steve, but we don't have that information.
Okay,
I'll get back to you on that and add it to the question matrix for next
Jen,
time.
you know?
Yeah, there was a problem with laminated root rot in Pine Lake Park and a number of parks, I think Beaver Lake too. So there was an arborist that was hired by the city to, tag the trees and kind of, I think follow up periodically.
That's an
That's my
issue,
understanding.
lots of places in the city, right, Jan? It's a big
Yeah.
issue in the city,
Yeah.
so.
So it's been there for a while.
I think one of the things that's important about the right-of-way tree study is that it's gonna help us identify gaps in our public works standards, which have to do with our requirements for planting trees, right? All of that kind of stuff, which then the whole idea is all of this builds on each other, right? So then that's gonna help us with the tree regulations that DCD is gonna work on in the next biennium, right? It's gonna help us with the right sizing of the UFMP that right? So all of this sort of building on each other, and one of the reasons we wanted to do the right-of-way tree study now is because we have trees in the right-of-way that aren't gonna make it, right? So we don't wanna go in and do the same thing again, right? So we wanna go in and make sure that we're, making our investments correctly, but then the other thing, and, I'm sure Jen has seen this in all of her work, is the native tree that used to be the native tree that was the right thing to plant 20 years ago isn't always the right thing to plant anymore, right? So we have a lot to learn, and I think it's a good, we've got this set up in a good way to do these building blocks moving forward.
Well, my lane bit of research suggests that our summers are, because they're hotter, we have a greater vapor pressure deficit. And these forked trees can't deal with it. Relative humidity is a ratio. Vapor pressure difference is a difference between saturated atmosphere and how much water is really in the atmosphere. It's the one that if it gets too far out of whack, the leaves start to wilt.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so before we move into the prioritization, I just want to put this in the context of the wider work plan for the next biennium. So what we are focusing on today is the first work plan item from the 2025-2026 proposed work plan, similar to the work plan that we put together for 2024 that is from the direction of council. These are all of the items that we anticipate being on our work plan for the next biennium. So I'll be working on the Energy Smart Eastside Heat Pump Program. We'll be updating the Sustainable Sammamish Guide, looking at continuation or not of the Sammamish Climate Challenge, enrolling with city facilities in PSE's Green Power Program, continuing and expanding on our waste reduction programming, fully implementing that green purchasing guide, expanding potential initiatives and programs through the East Side Climate Partnership, looking at that urban forest management plan, putting together that specific outreach program with you all, and then implementing the recommendations of the right-of-way tree study. In addition, we have the fleet electrification implementation, which the facilities team will be handling. So I don't have as much of a involvement in that implementation process, which is why that's a separate work plan item. All of those items in the box, I will be directly working on with other departments. So in addition to all of those work plan items, you'll see that top one, climate action plan implementation. That is what we're looking for direct recommendations from you all for. We have some money available to implement climate action plan actions. And we know we have a very robust climate action plan. There are many, many priorities, and we're looking at what is achievable within the next year or two. So the way that we've put this together, David, do you want to take a stab at this? And before we move on to that, we did provide an update on all of the climate action plan actions that are in progress or have been completed within this first year. So if there's any specific questions about, what's in progress in the notes section, we've kind of highlighted where each of those actions have come to fruition. So whether that's in the comprehensive plan, implemented in the transportation master plan, published in the Sustainable Sammamish Guide, or has been posted on social media. And then some of these programs as well that we've put together over the past year. So that kind of gives an overview of where we're at, and then we are looking to you all for where we should be going. And David, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, just a quick question on the, just as I look at the fleet electrification implementation, right? That's a big budget number.
Yes, it is.
And we talked about some of the challenges with all electric, not only just your small vehicles, but also especially your larger vehicles. The full life cycle of that electric vehicle, right from the digging up of the battery components to how do you so that full life cycle. And we talked about, as you're comparing it from a city perspective of, is that vehicle better for the environment when you look at that full life cycle, not just, while you're driving it down the road. And then as you plug that in, is 70% of the electricity coming from fossil fuel powered generation, right? And then as you look at companies like Toyota, who are moving away from all electric vehicles down the road, and they're now leaning more heavily on hybrid vehicles. That they say that makes more sense in the future. as any of that we talked about in that meeting, did any of that get back to the city council? And did they take any of that into consideration to adjust anything that they were going after on their fleet electrification?
So that full life cycle of from, you know, the inception of digging up the battery to that was not part of the fleet electrification study scope. So no, that wasn't a part of what we did. That is part of, though, to your point about like the electricity and things like that, right? That's part of why On Rose's work plan is to join the Green Power Initiative, right? So that we can mitigate that stuff to the extent that we can, right? We also do recognize, and I want to make it really clear, is that the threshold for the EV conversion is continuing level of service, right? So while there's lots of talk about electric snowplows, there's not one that's gonna get up and down 228th today, right? And so snowplows are not gonna be on that list, right? And some of the other ones, even the medium duty ones, where it's really more of a hybrid or something like that. So really, the electrification is really focused right now on the light duty. Some of the medium and higher duty stuff is really focused on the R99, so it's an emissions issue, right, at the end of the day. So we really tried to approach it with 228 needs to get plowed, right? We've still got public works folks who need to be in bigger trucks, but how can we do it in a way that lowers the carbon footprint?
Right.
So I would just say the other thing is that the just because of the nature of electricity, right? The consultants were only able to study from the transformer to us.
Yep.
Right? Now we're in this phase where we need to work with PSE to study the other side of the transformer. And then what that does to the investments, we don't yet know. So, but we have 1.4 million in the budget for this coming biennium to do that, you know, initial infrastructure work so that then we can really start purchasing EVs and do that conversion to the R99 fuel really in the next biennium. That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
We have some EVs now, let's be clear, but in terms of scale, right?
All right, now, Rose, walk me through again on this, or do you want to lead this or help guide this section?
Yeah, so just as a refresher for everyone, the way that we're weighting each of these actions, so staff have gone through and identified of the, 100+ actions in the climate action plan. We've chosen, I think there's 21, so about 20 actions in blue here, separated by topic. And each of those actions have been given a weight 1 to 3, 1 being it takes the least amount of staff time and is a lower budget amount or $0 budget amount. 2 being more significant staff time and investment required, as well, and or a higher budget dollar amount. And then 3 being, this is a really significant effort and or significant budget ask of the amount of funds that we have set aside for climate action plan implementation above and beyond that work plan that I just shared with you. So recognizing that we have, limited staff and limited dollars, but we do want to be making progress towards these goals. We would like feedback from the commission. We've kind of put it together. You get $6 to spend on each of these actions, and that will help to prioritize. You can choose 2 $3 actions, or 6 $1 actions, or some combination of those that lead up to 6 total. We were thinking it might be good to kind of talk through this in groups, so that then, we have a couple groups with their recommendations, then we can flesh out as a commission, where those $6 really should be going. I also want to clarify some of these actions, they're written kind of broadly, so what that might actually look like in terms of implementation. A good example is in the waste section, waste 1.3. We had a council member asking, and essentially what this action would be is the suggestion to essentially ban single-use plastics in our restaurants, for example, on this action.
Yeah.
So thinking about the number of restaurants that we have, thinking about some of the legislature that's already out there, is that something that we want to prioritize for the next year or 2? Or are there other actions that might be recommended to be prioritized? Rachel, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that one in particular was asked by the council for you to consider in all of this, right? But I think as we've had this discussion tonight, you know, a lot of that has really been around impact. And so looking for you all to provide us, you know, some ideas. I was thinking, like I was looking at, could you scroll up to transportation real quick? So some of these are, they're kind of big lofty things, but what does it look like, right? So if we look at 7.3, right? Engage with state, regional, and local agencies, private enterprise to explore feasibility of, you know, pilot partnerships and programs introducing electric vehicle car share. That's a 1 because that's a call. That, you know, that's a call to Zipcar and a meeting, right? And saying, hey, is this, are we a community that there's a market for you to come to, right? You know, so I'm just trying to show like sort of the differences. The first, the 3.1, collaborate with school districts, private schools, parents group, transportation providers to, you know, basically to increase, you know, alternative ways to get to school, because anybody who drives down 228 know that most of this community gets to school in a personal vehicle, right? That, as you can imagine, that will be a lot of work over a long period of time. That's going back to the changing of the hearts and minds kind of thing. So really, that's how we tried to weight these with the 3s to the 1s is, so, you know, picking 2 3s, honestly, could be a pretty, you know, pretty ambitious task. So, but with that, we're just sort of interested in your thoughts.
All right.
I had a couple questions, I guess, like, so when you go through the green pages, there's, what did you say, 20 some things that got tackled or kicked off or whatever it was this year. Why are we only planning to do 3 in the next biennium?
These are all items that we were able to, there is a fair amount of overlap between the 2024 work plan here and the actions in green. So this 2024 work plan is kind of the high level, what that looks like. And then in here, you'll see, so the city's telework policy, that's something that was already in kind of progress and now has been solidified. Versus, you know, the sustainable Sammamish guide and on social media. So that ties back to the work plan. So these actions are over and above the work plan items that have already been set for 2025 and 2026.
We got some tailwinds out of some things that were already happening that we were able to knock off because of reasons.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
And some of these are ongoing in the green, right? Like the, you know, green power and working to do a campaign to get other to get residents on board and things like that. So those shouldn't be looked as
One and done. We're gonna continue to
they continue to be a part
continue to turn green. Would be the goal. So
And then on the blue sections, I'll say something I said, I think maybe in our first meeting or something. It's super helpful that we have the 1, 2, 3 weightings and kind of understanding how that's coming about. But this is missing from the cap as well. It's got costs in the back in the appendix, but it has no concept of what's the expected impact of them. And this doesn't either. And this is pulled from the cap, so I get it, right? But I feel like that's a huge piece that's missing. It's like, because I obviously I don't know how the city works, so I keep coming up with ideas that you're like,
I know,
and it's fine, and I get it.
know.
I'm not mad about it. Like, I have ideas on how this should be done or whatever, and then those ideas, maybe 10% of them can actually be implemented or whatever. Like, it'd be really helpful to have some sort of like, it's a 3, but we also think it's 5, I don't know, 5 clouds.
But that's what we're actually, that's what we're looking for you to tell us.
come up
What
with
do
a
you
plan.
think has impact? Right? If you know, getting a car share at market doesn't have impact, we don't need to do that, right?
Right.
So you tell us what you think is gonna have the impact.
Oh,
yeah. I echo that.
And we talked a little bit about kind of what is the, you know, because the other way you can look at this is, you know, what's the outcome we're trying to drive, and then work our way back and say, okay.
That's how I learned.
Yes.
When I did my homework.
Yeah.
And I think,
I care about heat pumps.
and in my mind, the way that I try to line those things up is when I see the, you know, transportation land use, go back to what is that area of the cap? What is that the high level read trying to accomplish? And then which ones of these do I think are gonna help move that needle as much as I can? So that's kind of how I attach this to it. What is the outcome we're trying to get out of this?
Well, I would add something to that. Yes, we're trying to find things that'll benefit the environment that are actionable. But they also need to be promoted because then that gains momentum for future actions, right? So I think we need to celebrate wins on some of these and make sure that people are aware what the city's doing and accomplished. And I think that may help with some of the outreach, right?
Definitely.
And I'm not saying we just pick all low hanging fruit because that improves the metrics, right? I mean, we need to balance those. So.
Right. But to Tim's point, it's the metrics are really about impact, right? The low hanging fruit may not be.
Yeah.
What actually moves the needle.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we've been kicking around the last 2 or 3 commission meetings, right? How do we as a commission help influence what's already, 24 was already in place, 25 was pretty much already in place. This is really looking out at after 20, partially in 25, but 25 and beyond. What do we think are the priorities that they should start kind of moving toward to meet those outcomes?
Your point about plastic bottles was really timely. I was hanging out with a neighbor and he offered me a plastic bottle of water and I said, no, I don't drink water out of plastic bottles. Did you? He goes, well, we recycle this. Well, did you know actually only like 6 to 8% of all plastic bottles are actually recycled in the United States? He had no idea. He was, oh, I got to tell my wife about this, right? So it's little stuff like that that could have a big impact, right? It's one example, but
Yeah. Definitely, that word of mouth is huge.
I think people have a misconception about recycle. Like, you gotta look at those little numbers on the bottom, right? And make sure it's sorted properly. And a lot of people don't, and it doesn't get recycled. They feel good, they recycled, but they really didn't. It's gonna go into a landfill.
And it's gonna bog down the recycling machines and break them and everything's gonna get thrown away.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so do we all just want to kind of take a quick minute here and kind of go over these and then just have a discussion about how each of us would spend our 6 points?
So we get 6 points for all of these.
Yes.
So we want to
Yes.
spend them all in waste.
Yep.
We don't get to say anything about buildings.
Nope.
And
Okay.
part of this is we're really interested in that discussion, right? When you all
Right.
come back.
Yeah.
Because it's not like we're just gonna go, okay, we're stopping at 6, right?
Yeah.
We do wanna hear what that overall prioritization is.
This is theoretically year 2 of, from now until 2050. So, what's important to be focusing on right now, what's feasible now, what's important now, and then recognizing that everything will come in time. I'm gonna use this opportunity to use the restroom.
Pam, do you have any questions?
No, I'm just reviewing. Yeah.
I just wanna make sure you're.
Yeah. My pain meds are starting to kick in, so I'm not quite as with it as I'd like to be. Thank you for making it a little larger. Appreciate that. Sitting there going, help, I can't pinch and zoom.
And this is out on the website too,
This,
right?
yeah, so this document is available in the agenda packet, so you can scroll yourself as well. Give folks till 7:25, so another 2 minutes. Thank you.
Special license for it, of course.
Webinars are different than classic Zoom meetings because you're not a participant. Yeah.
Just meeting, everybody has the same amount of control.
It's 7 points.
I also want at least $7.
Do we have $7?
That's pretty classic right there.
Well, hopefully in your discussions, you're able to find 6 altogether, but that's okay to have some ranked priorities as well.
Gotta find somebody that can only spend money.
Yeah.
Well, the goal is collectively
Only spend
to come
6.
up with the 6.
All right,
It's a lot of options.
how we doing online? Pam and Brian, are you guys good? Maybe we can start with Pam and Brian each putting, if you could go based on the action number. So for example, TLU 5.1, if you could put your $6 and where you're allocating those in the chat, that would be great. Then we have record of that.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian. And then we can use that to get discussion with everyone else. Pam, did you get a chance to look at these?
Yeah, I'm typing my response right now.
Perfect, wonderful, thank you.
Pam's response.
Okay. Should we open it up for quick sharing and discussion?
Sure.
Should we all just say our numbers first and then so we have a
Sure, and we'll have some common consensus. We can discuss the most popular.
I've got WE 1.3. I've got TLU 5.1. I've got BEU 4.1.
You doing seven? Yeah.
It's okay.
All right, I'll go next. I did BEU 3.5.
Okay.
To be honest, I did this yesterday and was looking back at the cap, and that was like one of the ones that specifically had heat pumps within it. So
Yeah.
that's why I was like super excited about
That's
that one.
great.
BEU 4.1 as well. And then WR 2.2. And then if I had a $7, it would be TLU 7.3.
Okay.
Do you want mine?
Yeah.
So I was gonna do TLU 5.1 and BEU 3.5 and BEU 4.1. And then I was kind of torn between WR 1.2 or 2.1. And by way of explanation, probably the biggest thing we can do in water conservation is get rid of lawns.
Yes.
I got a big one and I want to turn it into native plants. And I would like some help in that regard. And I walk around a lot of these high dense neighborhoods and they've got this ping pong table sized lawn. So I'm thinking, who would want to bother mowing that thing? So some of these people have torn the lawn out and put plants in. Great idea.
I have no lawn. And it's
Yeah.
fabulous. I don't ever have to mow the grass.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. My kids play in the ferns in my backyard. It's great.
So I'm torn between WR 1.2 and WR 2.1. Do I want community organizations to tell me what to do, or do I want landscape and local government to tell me what to do?
Okay.
So I don't know which is.
Well, 1.2 is specific to city-owned properties.
Okay, so
Right,
I
versus
want 2.1.
Okay. That makes
Steve,
sense.
you went way over. You went 8.
8?
He ignores the
He
costs.
Yeah.
Finance it was.
All right, I'm gonna start with water, WR 2.2, I agree, smart irrigation management is a priority. And we're gonna go down the waste, 1.3. Really think circular economy collaboration can make a difference. And then also under waste, 2.3, I think so many people in our community don't understand the amount of food we waste in this country and the impact it has on greenhouse gas and things. So that's a big opportunity. And then under resilience, 1.5. Yeah, consumptive water use during drought, which seems to be more frequent in our area, at least in the summer. That should add up to 6.
Yep.
So 4 of you picked BU 4.1. Right. WR 2.1 has 3. Right?
Yep. And 7.3.
2.
Tim's 7th one. That
That was
was
my
Tim's
seventh.
That was Tim's, okay,
the seventh.
all right, I see how we're splitting hairs, Sarah. I'd say the other thing is WE 1.4 has two.
Yeah, 1.3 and 1.4 has two. So Nick and I picked 1.3.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, they're
But
kind
so
of
does
both about waste diversion. Well, maybe not.
3.5 also has two. 5.1 has two.
So let's look at our bucks here. So
Yeah.
BEU 4.1 is a 2.
And that had the most votes, so that,
And then it looks like we've got TLU, we're kind of split between 7.3 or 5.1. That's a 2 or a 1.
and then we've got WR 2.1. That had 3 votes. That's a 1-pointer. That's 4 total right now.
We're saying both of the TLUs, 5.1 and 7.3.
No, I was just doing the 7.3 right now. So this guy has 1. The 4.1 BEU 4.1 is 2, so that's a total of 3. And then WR 2.1 is 1 more for 4.
So 7.3 is about electric zip cars. Is that?
7.3 is, yeah, exploring the feasibility of EV car shares, which
There's more than just one vendor,
Right,
right? But yeah, it would be reaching out to vendors to see if there was a market here in Sammamish for something like that.
Do you think there is?
No,
I don't think so. I mean, if you lived in Seattle and you're in an apartment and you don't own a car, sure.
is there a future market for it? Yes. Right, with town center,
Yeah.
right, coming online, but today. I think there's probably more bang for the buck on the transportation side on the last mile side of things. So honestly,
yeah.
5.2,
5.2.
which is a higher lift, but because we would, and the reason it's a higher lift is because when Rose and I were having this conversation about it, it's one thing to source we'll just go with zip car, electric zip car in the city, right? We could probably find a spot for that here easily, that kind of stuff. Allowing electric scooters in the city, we probably need to have more of a community-wide
Now you
conversation
need to be
about
up on the
that.
floor. You're getting wishy-washy, dog. Yeah.
Sorry.
Pam, we can hear you.
Sorry.
Rachel, I agree that deserves consideration. I've just observed those electric scooters are scattered all over the place in many cities.
They are all over my front yard since I have two 15-year-olds, I can tell you,
Yeah.
right?
And what's the difference? So I put 5.1 down because I thought that was more partnerships and with local businesses, just getting the word out about, because some people don't even know about the vans
Right.
partnership that we have.
Right. That's more of a campaign versus trying to bring, an additional resource into town.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
plus I think someone mentioned in a previous meeting that there's a way to get from here to the light rail station in Redmond as well. I don't think people know about that, so that probably falls within that category.
Of 5.1.
Yeah.
So
Rachel, I agree with I agree with your comment about the scooters, but I think that they are a reality that, I see kids on them all the time, a little scary, but
they're very effective, right? I live in Seattle.
yeah.
They're very effective. And for last mile, if
Yeah.
we're gonna be honest, that's probably gonna be one of the best, easiest ways to get last mile connection in Sammamish immediately.
Yeah.
The scooters and bikes.
Electric bikes are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They scare me because they're, because I'm afraid somebody's going to get hit, but different issue, but still.
I agree. But to be successful, we couldn't just say, ta-da, here we go, community, right? We would need to make sure we have a community conversation about them.
You're talking about like Lime bikes. and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yep, Lime and Bird and,
Okay.
yeah. But again, the reason why it's more wait, then is because we need to get community buy-in for something like that in a way that you probably wouldn't need for an electric zip car. You know what I mean?
How does that work? Community buy-in for that?
We have
What's that?
community meetings and conversations and the city's considering doing this, come see what it's like, right? What would the rules be, kind of a thing, right? Some communities have, you know, rules about how they can park their bikes. You have 15-year-olds doing it, doesn't matter. Cause they don't, you know,
Don't follow the rules.
so
So currently, Sammamish doesn't have Lime bikes or any of the Lime?
No.
no,
Oh.
but we don't even know whether or not Lime or Bird or one of those things would think that there would be an adequate market here to
Is it
begin with.
prohibited? No, it's just not.
Not that I know.
A lot of,
requirement for speed on certain trails.
right.
I can't even imagine riding those down the hills towards the lake, towards 99.
So it would go both ways. It
Yeah.
would be, you know, the city being open to it and then
Just
the
thinking
vendor wanting to
there's-
engage.
All along that edge of that lake,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that are already complaining about bicycles going too fast on the East Lake Sammamish Trail.
Well, I live on the Redmond Sammamish border and, you know, there's Lime bikes all over Redmond.
Mhm.
And they're, you know, and then, but not even the Lime ones, but just personal owned ones, the electric
Mhm.
bikes and the electric scooters and electric skateboards
Mhm.
run up and down East Lake Sammamish all the time. So it's here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So managing speed and all that stuff, that's a separate issue, but yeah, they're not going away. So if it's a good way to do last mile.
It has the potential, again, I can't tell you whether or not they would foresee us as having, you know, enough of a market to make it worth their while.
I think something like having a town center helps that story, right? Cause you're like, hey, you know, there's a place where everybody's, right now, it's just like, everybody's kind of spread out.
Scattered.
And it's-
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and car share, you know, when you have a town center makes much more sense, so.
Okay.
So
So
looking at,
yeah,
yeah, looking at these numbers here, it seems like there's a consensus on BEU 4.1 and WR 2.1. So reminding that's a 2 for 4.1 and a 1 for 2.1. So that puts y'all collectively at 3 points, which gives you 3 points of leeway. Sounds like the other 4 that are kind of in consideration here is just showing for the screen. We've got TLU 5.1 at 2 or TLU 7.3 at 1. So the commission could choose to do both of those or one or the other. And then it looks like under waste, WE 1.3 and WE 1.4 are both pretty high up in those numbers here. So in addition to BEU 4.1 and WR 2.1, you could do either just WE 1.3 or some combination of either TLU 5.1 or WE 1.4. Each of those are at 2 in addition to TLU 7.3.
See, my thought on the waste one was, if we're trying to improve the environment, we need to understand what our baseline is, and doing something like this would show. What is the diversion rate for? Is it great?
you're talking about 1.3.
What's it for?
What up for it then?
Well, probably for both 1.3 or 1.4.
Now,
Oh,
I also
Yeah.
picked 1.3, and one of the main reasons, I was telling Rose, I was just over in Italy at the Europe's biggest green expo. It was Ecomondo in Italy, and it was 170,000 attendees.
Wow.
It was like attending, you know, 2 football games at the same time. It was hard to get around. I mean, they had, and one of the biggest things going on over in Europe right now is recycle. Everybody is about recycle. You know, recycling wood, recycling furniture, recycling tires. It's all about recycle. And so, how do we get ahead of where probably most of this is heading anyway? Because they're running out of resources over there, or virgin fiber, trees, or
Landfill space.
landfill space, all that. So getting ahead and getting a reduce, reuse, recycle, you know, we've got that mantra, but what does that really look like inside the city? And that's why I picked that, is because it's coming. And it'd be great if we can get ahead of that, especially, you know, compared to our peer group here in Washington State, because, you know, we've got a lot of resources here, so we don't think about that, you know, water, all of it. But everybody was so at that conference, everybody was all about recycle. How are you reusing what you already have? And making quality products So that's, when I saw that on there, I'm like, okay, that could make a real big difference.
I agree.
Definitely. I think one thing to consider with that is that because it is a 3, that then would push out some of the transportation and land use goals and actions that we're looking at as well. So if the commission does choose to recommend WE 1.3, then there wouldn't be a transportation or land use action on there. Just something to consider.
Yeah.
I think thinking too, just about. If we're thinking about 1.3. In terms of like a pilot program like we discussed earlier, right? Again, sort of thinking through the impact, right, that you all had that conversation about earlier too. Right.
When you think about, I go to at least 1 or 2 of the community recycling events that the city hosts, and they're great, and they are very well attended. I mean, if you don't get there early, the line is like all the way out into the street, so that's an opportunity to maybe combine what we're talking about here, 1.3, maybe.
Maybe
I don't,
not making a full 3 effort.
well, I don't know. I agree that if we're promoting circular economy and coordinating with waste haulers, so we're trying to figure out what's the baseline diversion rate to landfills in the plateau. That's a big project.
So we do have that information from ecology. I think this is getting specifically at the businesses rather than the residential side. That's the way I'm
Okay, I didn't
interpreting.
understand that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the part about just given we're such a residential community.
Yeah,
Right? So to your point though, on those, I did get some stats for you all, cause I was fascinated. Over 6,000 residents attended the 5 drive-through recycling events this year.
it's 10% of the population.
And it's a partnership with this class, so I wanna, real numbers are important, right? 443,000 pounds
It's huge.
of recycled material taken
Yeah.
care of. That's impact.
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
And to your point, we should be touting that and saying, hey, this is great stuff that we did. Make sure you join us next year at one of these events.
Great.
So we have to set, so maybe it's is 1.3 and 1.4 very similar? 1.4 is just a little lighter
Yeah,
version, so we could go 1.4 and then do 7.3 on TLU 7.3.
that would put you at
That
6.
would put us at 6. You guys think about that?
What's TLU 7.3?
Engage with state, regional, and local agencies. We
And
have-
that's not to say that we aren't doing these actions, it's
Yep.
just that they're not the nearest term
Yep.
for the ones that are. And then if we have extra time, maybe we do get to them.
I mean, I'm not gonna, I don't know, I mean. Does anyone do a car share that that was on the plateau?
Yeah, I thought your point was very good about is the right time for 7.3 now? And
Yeah.
it might not be.
Everything else
So-
in transportation is a 2 or 3, and we only got 1 point to play with.
Cause most people I know either own a car or they take public transportation, but they're not like doing a car share for the day to go somewhere or go to work.
And I picked the 5.1, which is 2 points.
But maybe that's a fresh conversation, you look at WE 1.4. There were also a fair number of folks putting in WE 2.3. Or WE, that's 1.3 again, so, that was your initial, as you're talking about it, you're not tied to these
Right,
couple that
yeah.
you've recommended, so. If it does make sense for the group to pick maybe a lighter waste one and then go a little heavier on transportation, that's part of what this conversation is for.
And some of it is, these are the ones that we wanna do. You guys go back and tell us how we could do it over the coming biennium, right? I mean, that's the thing is, we're the ones who have to make the harder choices, right? You all can provide us these recommendations and okay, we see where you are, we can come back and say, okay, we think this makes sense within this year and this makes sense within this year, and we talked about it and we're willing to get you to the 7, right? Or, we had an initial conversation with the community and there's some interest in the scooters, so we're gonna slow this one down so that we can bring, I mean, some of this is just gonna be, you all are project managers, you know how this stuff
Adaptive
works, right?
management, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
This isn't set in stone.
Right.
No, we
So
get that.
if you would like, we could take this and come back with, here's what we think makes
Yeah.
sense.
But I think there's some themes here, so.
Yep,
We're focused on greenhouse gas reduction, right? So there's a campaign about heat pumps, but I think waste plays into that. And the circular economy could also contribute to metrics that help us improve our greenhouse gas reductions. Sounds like more from a business perspective than residential, from what I'm hearing.
I think it's the opposite because we have so much more residential than
That's what I was
business,
thinking, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Rose, tell me if I'm wrong, and you have full permission to do that. But I think we have a good path here of that we can go ahead and kind of finish the sausage and bring it back to you and say, what do you think?
I look at this waste reduction as kind of more of a short term, and by that I mean maybe over the next 5 years. But once you get it down, where a lot of your stuff isn't being thrown away but recycled, it'll probably stay down.
Mhm.
Whereas in the case of the heat pumps, that's a long slog.
Well, and some of the waste stuff I think really has to do with Rose knows this stuff better than I do, but the producer responsibility, right? Because really the best way for us to tackle this is to not bring it into our homes to begin with, right? So how do we work on that too? And there's some statewide stuff that's been going on too on that, which, could be interesting, so.
I think we have some very clear priorities kind of at the top with those first 3 points and then some wiggle room with the last 3 or 4 points that we can continue that discussion as we continue this outreach pilot program discussion as well.
Okay.
So narrowing it down from 20 to 6 potential actions, that's great.
No,
And
this is really helpful, so. Is this going to inform our meeting next month? We're really kind of rolling up our sleeves, like what are we gonna be working on next year? Have we done that prioritization now, and then you guys will come back with maybe some more details next month?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll come back with what does this look like and how do we think this fits in with the rest of the work program,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
I think the other thing I heard is, what does that campaign look like? Right, and I think we can do a broad, here are the different things.
well, and we've got Earth Day coming up in April, and so. Perhaps some of these campaigns could be fed into Earth Day to the booth that the city has, right? Because we remember last year, we had a lot of people and a few of us, but it was hard, you get people's attention of your kids for like 30 seconds, right? So
Yeah.
there's an opportunity there. We just need to figure out how to do it effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're also looking to have a larger Arbor Day celebration this upcoming year in partnership with you all. Last year, it was basically just me working with Arbor Day Elementary. And I think that might also be a good opportunity for some of the low impact development, native species, what you're trying to get at with WR 2.1, which was a clear priority for a lot of commissioners. So again, finding ways to wrap this into existing work and kind of amplify these messages is going to be key and ongoing, not just next year, but until 2050.
And depending, if we move forward with the HOA communications, maybe these projects we've chosen would inform that communication, like information on greenhouse gas reduction, waste recycling, water conservation, all of that. So help us focus that communication.
Absolutely. I think that perfectly ties into the EU for 4.1 with community energy conservation and
Yeah.
emissions reduction education program. Absolutely. Start with HOAs, expand from there.
It's all tied together now.
Pam, did you have anything to add online, or Brian in the comments? I want to make sure you all have a chance to speak as well.
No.
I'm just trying to think about how to get the word out and start, again, going back to what are our messages? What are the key priorities? What are our message pillars? And then how do we start testing some of those messages? to get
Sound
people's
like a communications
reaction.
expert.
We love it, Jim Campbell.
So annoying, isn't it?
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's what I'm thinking, because there's a lot. I mean, if you look at this list right now, it honestly, it reads like a laundry list. And I think it's prioritizing them and taking them, you know, showing an overall strategy and then breaking it down, blah, 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 blah. You guys get this. So, yeah, I don't know, Brian, I know you don't have a mic, a working mic, but, you know, I think students, you know, I just go back to some guerrilla marketing tactics, really, you know, at the schools, for example.
That's a good one. I think like you already mentioned the success of the recycling.
Yeah,
I find out about those with those stupid little green flyers that come out, right? And I don't want to minimize them, but they're like, you know, but I and then I put it on my calendar and I hoard stuff all year or till the next one shows up kind of thing, because I know they're coming. But
yeah,
that I don't know how hard it is to make those things, but that seems like a really great way to just be like, whatever you want to message, right? That people read is like how we've learned our community consumes information. They read paper. Like that's a great way. We don't have to keep those just for recycling.
And the nice thing about those is it's one piece of paper, dual sided.
Yeah.
It's not a trifold or anything that, because I get those and I'm like, too much information. But the simple little recycling thing, simple to read, dates and what, you know, what you can recycle, just some clear information. So I think simple is better.
Yeah,
If we do something like that.
yeah, it's proven successful. How do we double down on that and communicate other things besides recycling events on those things? You know, whatever our focus area is, this is, and then go to CAP, learn more, go to the site department, right? But you don't have to. Here's the 3 things you need to know about recycling. Clean it, separate it, and check with RE to make sure the numbers are right.
I like that approach too. Kind of start with something small. Again, maybe I'm overreacting here, but you know, after this election cycle, I think people are going to just bristle if they get the impression that we are trying to get them to spend 20 grand right away, or you know, just I don't know. I could be wrong, and I think I'm just being overly sensitive right now, but because I am, but I'm just seeing some reaction. So
All right. Thank you, Pam.
I'll be
I was
quiet
gonna
now.
say- We could also have Rose do another video like she did for the was the carpool.
The carpool reel, yeah.
She's got a comp plan one out there
There's
too.
comp plan one, there's gonna be a shop local one coming next week,
Nice.
Oh,
so,
good.
yeah, we're doing what we can on socials, but, I'll briefly touch on, and I'm happy to share at a future meeting as well, but, I recently attended a conference with the part of the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which is municipalities from across the nation, all joining together. They have regional affinity groups, but they have one national conference each year. And a really big continual theme was community engagement to propel climate action. And there were multiple speakers who talked about, you know, embedding ambassadors in your community, whether that's leveraging commissions, leveraging volunteer or community organizations that already exist in partnership with the city to amplify your message and really build trust with your residents. Because some folks are going to find information online or are maybe not going to go to the city website. So finding ways to help channel folks and have that centralized messaging is really important. And also simple messaging was the theme that we were hearing a lot. Some people don't understand or don't have the time to take to understand this new technology and some of these complex systems. So simplifying it, finding ways that will truly incentivize folks to take that action is key. So community ambassadors, you know, having groups like this, and then also remembering kind of the equity lens, you know, not everybody has the money to spend. So what can they do instead, and not making sure people aren't left behind. And then one other theme, this came up earlier in the meeting, and Steve, you know, I love your modeling, but some communities are not going to be reaching their goals on time. And so celebrating the wins along the way and making sure that we're looking at our goals and setting goals in a way that maybe isn't, a 90% reduction, but a 1.5 reduction every year and continuing to make progress. And you want progress maybe over perfection sometimes, and continuing to move in that right direction and making sure that you're not leaving folks behind, because it is a collective effort as we're continuing this work. So.
I like it. Yeah, to that point, what I like about this exercise, what I like about being involved this year, that we couldn't be last year, is we can all come together on what it is, and in my work, we have a disagree and commit leadership principle where it's like, get your thing out.
Yep.
We're agreeing, we're going, we're gonna do it, like focusing on it, so we don't have analysis by paralysis, right? There's so many things we can do. We can't do it wrong, right? We can do things, let's start focus on it and build on it, so.
And reinforcing along the way, yeah,
For
sure.
if we only get to 1.4% instead of 1.5, that's awesome, right? We made 1.4%, right? So I'm looking forward to next year.
All right,
All right.
Thank you.
folks.
and with that, we're adjourned.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Time.
Thank you. All
1
right,
minute early.
Thanks, Pam and Brian,
Thank
for joining
you.
online.
you're welcome. Hopefully everybody has a safe, happy Thanksgiving.
Spam, you too.
Thanks, man. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, just.
Have a good
made
evening.
Statement just now.
Oh.
Go ahead and read that real quick.
Want me to read that out loud?
Sure, you read the other one.
Okay, I like our differing inputs and minimizing it to few choices. I feel like I can eagerly tell my friends these things which will change my school. For my school, in classes, we had to talk about the right areas to put our trash, as before we put it in the wrong trash bin, which would ruin the whole pile. If we can just contact schools and make them make sure that students watch a video we create on how to make the right sustainable action choices, I think it would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Brian.
That's awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brian.
Thank you for reading that.
Well, thank you all.
Yeah, that was good.
Good.
Thanks for those